When the law fails to give you justice, is taking matters into your own hands ever actually okay? This question is exactly what brings us to the story of Marianne Bachmeier. She's a mother from Germany who honestly shocked the entire world back in 1981 by doing something practically unheard of, right inside a courtroom. After losing her little girl to a horrific crime, Marianne decided to take a stand and shot her daughter's killer while the trial was still going on. It sparked this massive global debate. Was Marianne just a criminal who broke the law? Or was she actually a hero mom who was brave enough to fight for her own daughter's justice? Maybe today we'll finally find out as we dive into the legendary story of Marianne Bachmeier. Marianne was born on June 3, 1950 in Sarstedt, a small town near Hildesheim in Lower Saxony, West Germany. She grew up right there, in the same place her parents fled to from East Prussia after World War II. Marianne was raised in an incredibly conservative household. Her parents were strictly religious, especially her father, who had actually been a member of the Waffen-SS. Some sources say he was the type of dad who ruled with an iron fist, but he was also a heavy drinker who spent way too much time at the local bars. Between his drinking and his harsh discipline, their home was anything but happy. It was full of constant fighting and violence whenever he was drunk, so honestly, it's no surprise that their parents eventually got divorced. But things didn't get any better when her mom remarried. Marianne saw her new stepfather as a total dictator and absolutely hated him. That resentment only grew until he eventually decided she was just a troubled teen and her own mother kicked her out of the house. Struggling just to get by, Marianne was doing her best, but things only got harder when she found out she was pregnant. She was only 16 when she had her first baby in 1966. Because she had no money and no support, she had to make the heartbreaking choice to give her baby up for adoption. But honestly, her life only got more tragic from there. Just 2 years later, at 18, she was pregnant again. And what's even more devastating, she was actually assaulted right before giving birth to her second child. Once again, because of how broken her life was, she had to let that baby go for adoption too. A few years later, after moving on, Marianne started dating the manager of Tupasa, the pub where they both worked. By 1972, at 22 years old, she was pregnant for the third time. Her daughter, Anna, was born on November 14th. This time, Marianne decided she was going to raise her alone, since the father refused to step up. Because of that, little Anna was always at the pub with her. They'd often stay way past closing time because Marianne just didn't want to go home right away after her shift ended. If you watch the documentary called De Fall Bachmeier, Keine Zeit für Tränen and Anna's Mother, it's pretty clear that Marianne was just a single mom working late nights. She'd basically sleep all day from morning till evening. This meant 7-year-old Anna was often left to look after herself during the day. Deep down, Marianne knew this lifestyle was a problem for her daughter. She actually thought about giving Anna up for adoption to someone who could take better care of her, but she just never went through with it. According to Marianne's friends, Anna was treated like a grown-up way too soon. She had to handle so many things on her own. It's honestly so sad because people would see little Anna following her mom to work every night. When it was time for bed, she'd just sleep right there at the bar, while her mom was busy with customers and the party was still going on. Her friends said Anna was such a sweet, bubbly girl, but sadly, she never really got to experience the normal family life she deserved. Anna, who honestly had so little happiness in her life, met such a tragic end. This 7-year-old girl apparently had an argument with her mother on May 5th, 1980, and she decided to skip school that day. But sadly, that's when she was kidnapped by this 35-year-old butcher named Klaus Grabowski. Anna had actually visited Klaus's house before to play with his cats, so when she skipped school, Klaus lured her back there to play with them again, and he held her captive for several hours. He then did this disgusting thing and finally strangled Anna using his fiancée's tights. According to the prosecutor's statement and the written report, Klaus then tied her body up, packed it into a box, and just left it on the bank of a canal. But Klaus's fiancée actually found out and reported him to the police. When they checked his criminal record, it turns out Klaus was already a registered sex offender who'd been convicted before for assaulting 2 other girls back in 1976. He'd actually agreed to undergo chemical castration, but later, Klaus went through hormone therapy just to reverse the effects of that castration. After being arrested for Anna's case, this man claims that Anna had tried to blackmail him for money by threatening to tell her mom about the abuse. So he said he was terrified of going back to prison, and that's supposedly what pushed him to kill her. What Klaus did completely shattered Marianne's heart. Even though she hadn't been the perfect mom to Anna, she had still struggled so hard as a single parent to raise her. Anna's death pushed Marianne to her absolute breaking point, and it sparked an act that would literally shock the entire world. Klaus was finally put on trial for Anna's murder. It was March 6, 1981, the third day of the trial. Around 10 a.m., Marianne secretly smuggled a Beretta .22 caliber pistol into courtroom 157 at the district court in Lübeck, Germany. Driven by pure rage and a desperate need to avenge her little girl, Marianne calmly walked up behind Klaus as he sat in the defendant's chair. She then fired 7 shots at close range into his back, with 6 of those bullets hitting him. Right after the shooting, Marianne immediately lowered her gun and was arrested without any resistance. Witnesses in the courtroom reported that she made several statements, including the words, "I wanted to kill him, he killed my daughter. I wanted to shoot him in the face, but I shot him in the back. I hope he dies." Marianne was described as being incredibly calm, which was such a haunting contrast to the absolute chaos and panic that erupted in the courtroom the second those shots went off. Marianne's bold act of revenge ended up killing Klaus right there in the courtroom, and she was immediately arrested for murder. Her motive was crystal clear. She wanted to avenge her daughter. Losing Anna was already such a devastating blow, but then she had to deal with the trauma of the trial. Hearing Klaus's defense try to get him a lighter sentence just made her sick to her stomach. She felt like the justice system had completely failed to protect her child and failed to give them any real justice, so she felt she had to take matters into her own hands. After the shooting, all of Germany was in shock. Honestly, the entire world was watching. Even though what she did was illegal, she still gained so much sympathy from people who could feel her pain and frustration. The case sparked this huge, heated debate about the limits of the law, the rights of victims, and the psychological toll of such a horrific crime. It just kept growing. To some people, Marianne became a symbol of a desperate mother fighting for her daughter after being pushed to the edge by a system that failed her. But others condemned what she did, calling it a dangerous form of vigilantism. After the shooting, Marianne's actions triggered this massive media frenzy and an intense public debate across West Germany. TV crews from all over the country, and even from abroad, rushed to Lübeck just to cover the story. At first, most people really sided with her. They felt like what she did was totally understandable, especially after the horrific way her daughter was killed, and then seeing how lenient the German court system was being. To cover her legal fees while she was in custody, Marianne actually sold her life story to Stern magazine for about 100,000 marks. She was flooded with supportive messages, gifts, and flowers from people who honestly felt for her. But still, there were others who believed a country like Germany just couldn't tolerate people taking the law into their own hands. However, things started to change after Stern published her story. It included all these details about how she'd given up her first 2 children for adoption, how she'd actually treated Anna, and her behavior after Anna's death. As it turns out, public opinion started to get really divided. Some people began questioning if her grief was even real, and they criticized her for being a bad mom. Others started to wonder and speculate, was this actually a premeditated murder? No one could really prove if Marianne had planned the whole thing or not. But even with all the criticism, there were still so many people openly showing her sympathy for what she did. At the same time, the German justice system was getting slammed for letting a man who'd already assaulted 2 girls use hormone therapy to reverse his treatment. On November 2, 1982, Marianne was initially charged with murder, but after 28 days of negotiations, the prosecutors actually dropped the murder charge. Finally, on March 2, 1983, the court reached a verdict. Marianne was convicted of manslaughter and illegal possession of a firearm, and she was sentenced to 6 years in prison. But here's the thing, she only ended up serving 3 years. It was a pretty light sentence, especially when you think about what a murder conviction could have been. This basically shows that the court and the jury actually had some level of empathy for her. A survey from that same year by the Allensbach Institute really highlighted how split everyone was. It turned out that 28% of people felt the sentence was just right, while 27% thought it was way too harsh. Then, another 25% felt the punishment was too light, and the remaining 20% just couldn't make up their minds. The impact of this case ended up raising some much bigger questions about the rights of victims' families, the limits of the justice system, and whether taking the law into your own hands can ever truly be justified. Some people even wondered, would the reaction have been the same if Klaus had killed Marianne's partner or a sibling instead of her child? Is a grieving mother seen as more sympathetic than any other family member? Those questions never really got an answer. They just became part of the public debate. For a while, Marianne's case just dominated the headlines and every conversation people were having. But regardless of all the controversy, Marianne's story has become this lasting symbol of a mother's pain and desperation. A mother who had to watch the justice system fail to protect her own child's rights. After serving 3 years of her sentence, Marianne was released and started a whole new chapter. She married a teacher in 1985, and 3 years later, they moved to Lagos, Nigeria, where they lived in a German camp while her husband taught at a school there. But unfortunately, the marriage didn't last, and they ended up getting divorced in 1990. Marianne then moved to Sicily, Italy, to work as a hospital assistant in Palermo. She stayed there for quite a while until she eventually got sick. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which brought her back to Germany in 1994, 13 years after the shooting. Even then, Marianne was still a public figure. She appeared on radio and TV shows and even published her autobiography. She always stood by what she did, claiming she shot Klaus after thinking it through very carefully. Her reason? She wanted to uphold the law and stop Klaus from spreading any more lies about Anna. She openly admitted she never regretted her revenge. But here's the most shocking part. In an ARD documentary back in 2006, an old friend of Marianne's revealed that she had actually been practicing her aim. Apparently, she'd been practicing shooting in the basement of the Tapasa pub right after Anna was killed. As her pancreatic cancer got worse, Just a short time before she passed away, Marianne asked a reporter named Lucas Maria Boehmer from the broadcaster NDR to stay with her. She actually wanted him to film the final stages of her life. Finally, Marianne took her very last breath on September 17, 1996, at the age of 46. She passed away in a hospital in Lübeck and was buried right next to Anna in the Bergtor Cemetery. It's like after everything, they were finally together again. Maybe Marianne Bachmeier wasn't just a woman who broke the law. Maybe she was just a mother who was broken by the world. Her life was a messy, tragic string of heartbreaks, but through all that darkness, Anna was her only light. And when that light was snuffed out so cruelly, Marianne didn't just lose a daughter, she lost her entire soul. They say time heals everything, but for Marianne, time only stood still in that courtroom. She lived her final years carrying a heavy silence, only to find peace when she was finally laid to rest right beside her little girl. It's a haunting reminder of how far a mother's love can go, even when it crosses the line between justice and revenge. Sleep tight, Anna. Sleep tight, Marianne. Finally, you're both home. Really home.